Hi, everyone. I wanted to do this video because this was a really impactful event in my life. Also, from a narrative point of view, it starts out dramatic and then it just keeps going. So there might be a few points in this story where you might wonder if I'm making it up or if I'm pitching you a Hollywood movie. But I promise that everything that I'm about to tell you actually happened. So first, I mentioned this on Twitter, but I got the opportunity and unique privilege to go to lunch with a pilot who actually flew the U-2 spy plane back in his younger years. So this is like a spaceman to me. You know, they're working up there at 70,000 feet, and pressurized suit, all that stuff, and on a reconnaissance plane that's just full of cool sensors and equipment. And so this is basically getting the opportunity to go to lunch with one of my heroes. And we went to Taco Cabana. If you live in my area, you know what that is. It's a slightly fancier Taco Bell. And I wanted to hear all about the U-2 stories. And this guy is so awesome, but he wants to tell me about the drone, the DJI drone that he bought on Amazon the other day, and all about the cool things that it does and how he's programming it to do interesting things. And in my head, I'm just like, I don't want to hear about the drone. I want you to tell me about the spy plane. So the reason I bring that up is because some of you know that I work in game development, and you're probably like, get to the game development stories. So, I'm not a spaceman. I don't have U-2 pilot stories, but I do have good game development stories, and I will get to those in a future video. This one's worth telling. You'll see why. So I'm going to use real addresses in this story. I want to illustrate it as we go, and I feel comfortable doing that because this happened a long time ago. This is all in 2007, and nobody lives in any of the places that I'm mentioning anymore. So this happened in Vancouver, and I don't live in Vancouver anymore. The bad guys don't live in the address that I'm going to show you. So don't make anything of it. I'm not doxing the bad guys or myself or anybody. These are just at the addresses that were current at the time. And if I was making this video in 2007, it would be odd to be sharing that info with you. But I feel comfortable with it now. I might stay away from names of people and things like that, but I am going to paint a really vivid picture of all the places involved. In 2007, I lived in Vancouver, British Columbia, and in the Yaletown area, in a townhome that was right on the seawall. So this is on a road called Marina Side Crescent. The address is 1228 Marina Side. And if it looks a little bit familiar, it's because Hollywood loves Vancouver and they love the seawall. So you've seen this in the background of a lot of things. Supergirl, Arrow, The Killing on the boat dock, a lot of things. So that is all kind of right outside my door there, and this is a condo building, and I was just in a townhome on the bottom floors, so it had an external door to the outside, stepping right onto that seawall. At the edge of Yaletown. And so from the inside, there's a lot of externally facing glass to a very public area. So That's that's where I was living. On September 15th of 2007, we went upstairs to go to bed. This is a multiple floor townhome, and the master bedroom is up on the second floor. In Vancouver, it's really common for older buildings to not have air conditioning, and so we had a standalone unit sitting over there, kind of near our balcony, and those things are pretty loud compared to central AC with ducts going everywhere. So it's whirring over there in the corner, and we go to sleep, completely unaware of the events that are happening downstairs while we sleep that really altered my life forever. So if you want to look at my life in two parts, there's everything up until September 15th, 2007, and everything after. So on the morning of September 16th, 2007, I walked downstairs into the kitchen, making coffee probably. And if you've ever had something stolen from you, you probably know the experience of not noticing it right away. You're in your house. It all feels the same that it does on every other day, and you're not really, or at least I don't, scan everything in my house to make sure nothing changed overnight. But then I noticed over towards my television that where my Xbox 360 was, there were just cables hanging to the left of the television. And I knew instantly what was happening. I knew instantly that I'd been robbed. I knew instantly that people had come into my house and while we were sleeping and taken things. And then I started to look for and find that other things were missing also. My laptop was gone. My wallet was gone. A few other things, all in immediate reach, kind of down there in the living room area. Then I noticed that the one of the glass windows facing the seawall was open, just a hair, and that my front door was unlocked. And so pretty quick, I realized that somebody had gotten in via the window, or multiple people. I still don't know. And then just simply taken some things and exited out of my front door. And I slept through all this. Like I said, the AC unit was running up there, and I was on a whole different floor. And thankfully, I didn't wake up. I think I would have, looking back, don't want to confront people that are in my house for bad things. I was in Vancouver, so there isn't a whole bunch of self-defense options. So it's probably, and I don't think they were there to hurt me. I think they were there for things, and as far as I'm concerned, it's just as well that I slept through that. It would have been worse probably to have a meeting. I don't know how that would have gone. So then I did the obvious thing. I called the police. They showed up pretty quickly. Did the whole fingerprint dusting on all the windows, and there was a lot. You could definitely see where somebody had been manipulating and touching the window from all different sides and angles and stuff. And so it confirmed what I already knew. That's how they got in. And we did an inventory of all the things that were stolen. The most significant of that turns out to be my wallet. A good number watches, and a good number of things were stolen, but my wallet turns out to be really the most damaging. It is, by the way, damaging just to have somebody break into your house while you're sleeping. If you haven't experienced that, I would not. I don't even have the words to say what that feels like. If you've had something stolen from you when you weren't at your house, you already know the violation that kind of is. To have it happen while you're sleeping or in your house is a horrific level of violation, and really, really, really difficult to say or articulate how unsettling that is. So the cops sat us down at our dining room table and said that there was little chance that they were going to find the people responsible, or that they were going to find any of the things that were stolen. So this is like a doctor giving you the bad news, right? They were telling me that the stats just aren't good for, property crime and this kind of thing. They don't have squads of detectives out hunting down people that stole laptops. That's just a fact of police work. You'd like to think that happens, but it totally doesn't happen. And they were really straightforward about that. She was really nice, but straightforward about the you're not going to get your stuff back, and we're probably not going to catch the guy. So that's what they said. Then I did the next obvious thing, and that was contact all the people, that credit cards and bank and all that I have accounts with, and start shutting all that stuff down. That's just what happens when you have your wallet stolen. Some of you might have been through something like that. And it turned out there was already fraud. There was already charges on my Amex and on a Visa. And so just in that overnight hours and early morning hours, it was already being used. And I immediately closed, and closed doesn't really mean closed in the world of credit cards, and I'll explain that in a second. But I closed my accounts. I said, I had my wallet stolen. I needed to shut my account off, and they were very accommodating about that. And by the way, all these credit card companies were also super cool about immediately reversing all the fraudulent charges. So the thing people worry the most about, getting your credit card stolen, turns out to be not that big of an issue in terms of the fraud charges. They in my experience, they were super quick to reverse everything with no questions asked. So that's when I learned that credit cards can be turned back on, because even though you shut a card off, you still have, I guess, like a customer. You're still a customer of that bank or whoever issued the card. You still have an active profile. You're still an account holder, even if you don't have an active one. You're still a customer. So you can call back, or the bad guys can call back at any time and say, yeah, I turned off my card. I want it turned back on now. And they did that. So these are experienced identity theft people, and they quickly turned on all the cards that I turned off, and resumed the fraudulent charges. And from here, the different credit cards kind of go different ways. The Visa and MasterCard stuff were pretty accommodating about for real shutting it down, like off. And Amex was a little bit different. They kept allowing charges, and I don't have like a huge place to complain, because the Amex is also really good about reversing charges. So this isn't costing me anything that somebody's fraudulently using my Amex, but it drove me crazy that somebody was out there successfully using the credit card that they stole. It just drove me nuts. And I actually ended up at some point on the phone with a high-level kind of security person at Amex, and they said an interesting thing. They said, we have a choice between security and customer service, right? That's a whole spectrum. Security, hard security on one side, fantastic customer service on another side. And she said, we lean on the customer service side, even if that means that there's fraud, even if that means giving up a little security. We're going to assume it's you, and we're going to do everything we can to support you, get you a duplicate card. If you're stuck somewhere, help you. So that's their kind of corporate philosophy, which, by the way, I think is great. But it was hard for me because I couldn't stop this fraud from happening. So so that's what's happening with the credit cards. This is all happening over several months. So not weeks, months. So this is now, I said, it's happened in September. This is now November, December, January, and I think somewhere around February. I'd have to check the police report on this. I think it was in February. I was at Royal Bank of Canada, RBC, which is where I had my checking and savings account. And just really briefly, we did the whole reset everything at Royal Bank. They actually had us fill out new customer cards, new signature cards, and everything, just like we had walked in off the street, because they wanted to cut all association with all my old account numbers and make all that stuff useless, which was smart. But in February, I happened to be actually kind of near the main downtown branch of RBC, and I got a text message confirming outgoing wire transfer from my savings account, and it was all of it. Like, all of it. So I went directly to the RBC branch, downtown Vancouver, and had the extreme fortune that these identity thieves chose to wire the money into PayPal, not into some offshore bank, and which would have been a whole different thing. PayPal isn't really a bank, so they're not regulated in the same way that a bank is. In a bank, your money's yours, and if you want to have it, you can take it, etc. PayPal, I don't even know what you buy at PayPal, but their version of currency isn't currency, so it's not regulated like a bank. And they're free to just put a hold on an account, period. Just lock it. Your bank doesn't do that. Usually your bank, it's complicated for a bank to just freeze your account. That's not an easy process. PayPal, they just click a button, and they did that. So the head of security for RBC contacted PayPal, said this is a fraudulent transfer, and PayPal locked it. And the good news on this one is that PayPal actually did reverse the transfer, and all of what got wired out of my savings account got put back in. This is now a big deal. We're not dealing with just felony burglary. We are now dealing with grand theft. And something even more sinister is happening inside the bank. And I'm I'm sorry to RBC for now telling this, because they don't want you to know this. But what had actually happened is that in those months that I ticked off, November, December, January, someone from the identity theft ring, like one of the people involved in this identity theft, actually went to the Royal Bank of Canada and got a job working in customer service at the call center maybe, and got to the point where they had access to the internal systems at RBC and could look up my account and get my wiring information using the information that they had on me. So it was an employee at RBC that did this, but they got duped also. It was a member of this identity theft ring that wormed their way in. They're like a literal virus, right? The person got into RBC, worked their way up, got the access from the inside, and had everything they needed to clear my saving account out. So some really committed identity thieves. That is a lot to get a job somewhere and all that just to get access. I told you this was going to sound like a Hollywood movie. It gets a little worse. RBC didn't cooperate with the Vancouver Police Fraud Department on this. And I know that's frustrating to hear. They wouldn't tell the police the name or anything about the employee that had done gotten into their network and gotten stolen what they needed to initiate this wire transfer, which is really super frustrating because they literally know everything about the person that is doing the bad thing and won't share any of that with the police department. If you think about that for a second, you will realize why that is. It's because that's newsworthy. Somebody got into a bank via the customer service or call center or whatever, and got access to inside information and used that to route money or wire money out of people's accounts. That's a news story, and that doesn't look good for RBC. So they just sat on it. No police report, wouldn't communicate anything. Of course, they said that they were just going to handle it themselves, which just means fire the person. And that's all they would do. And that killed it as a story. So agree with it or not, their strategy worked. No one knows that happened. It's in the police report, but nobody knows that happened. Perhaps the lowest point in all this happened just after that, when the head of security for RBC, just a giant man in a really intimidating suit, kind of exactly what you would cast in a movie for a head of security, looked like a head of security. He came with the bank manager. Both of them talked to me and said, "I'm sorry that the Royal Bank of Canada cannot continue to serve you anymore as a customer." So whatever I was basically bringing my identity theft problem into the Royal Bank of Canada, and they didn't want any more of that. They didn't want any more of people trying to attack my accounts or what happened. They didn't want that to happen again. They were done with me. And that was kind of crushing. I might have at that point switched banks anyway, just for my own safety and protection. But it hurt to kind of be kicked out of the bank on top of what had just happened. So this was a really, really difficult little period. And on the police side, the Vancouver Police Department, they actually now kicked this up into for real fraud investigation, which was in a weird way a positive thing, because this had been continuing for months and months and months, me battling with the credit cards and stuff. And they sent a fraud detective out to my house, and I told him this whole, everything that had happened with Royal Bank. And I said, I've already chosen a new bank. It's not one I think that people would guess, like any of the other big Canadian banks. And I said, so I feel good about it. And he said, the fraud guy sitting at my dining room table, and he said, "Is it Coast Capital Credit Union?" And I was just stared at him in shock. And I said, "Yes, it is Coast Capital." And he said, "Yeah, it's right outside your building. I figured you'd probably go to the most the most convenient place for you." So that's why he's a cop. That's what they do. It also made me realize how naive I was about this kind of warfare, right? So the Vancouver fraud guy is awesome. I don't want to be calling people out by name, but this guy is really, really, really great, and gave me some good advice. He told me a little about what they were going to do operationally. I'm not going to share that. It's in the police report, and I don't want to give fraud people information on how they are tracked down by police departments. I'm just going to leave that little bit out. So I was so angry at this point, so deeply kind of hurt by the whole thing. The Royal Bank incident had just happened, the wiring of my savings account, in addition to my home being broken into, and several months of fighting credit card fraud. So I'm really tired and really pissed off. So I decided to go on the offensive. I am actually pretty talented at getting information. That's something I'm pretty good at. And so I just decided to flip on full hacker mode, and I called up Amex, the company that's so committed to customer service. And, there's active fraud still happening on that account. And at that time, the fraud people, the bad guys, happened to be asking for an additional card to be issued on my Amex account. There was all kinds of fraud, but that's just happened to be what was happening at that time. So I called up impersonating the fraudsters. So I'll steal their identity, whatever. And I said, yep. I requested an additional card to be issued. And I confirmed that Bianca Clark was the name that was supposed to be on the card, which I had never heard of, and Googling didn't help me find much. And then I said, you're sending this to my Vancouver address, right? This is social engineering. And the nice customer service lady said, no, it's a Surrey address. Surrey is a little municipality outside of Vancouver, north of Vancouver. I think it's north. And I said, okay, thanks. I had already gotten the information that I needed. So from here, you don't do this all in one go. I don't know why I'm telling you how to socially engineer stuff, but you don't do it all in one go. I got the Surrey piece, which is just what I needed for the second call. And I called right back, and I got a different a different person, different rep on the Amex side. And we went through the whole thing again. Yeah, I asked for another card. This is the Surrey address, right? And she confirms, yep, Surrey. And I said, it's 2nd Avenue. And she said, no, 80th. That was it. Second call, she gave it up. I was willing to do this all day, by the way. I was going to work this for as long as I had to. But I got it out. I got it out pretty easily. The harder piece was the house number. I now know the city. I now know the street. And it took me a few more calls, same technique, by the way, to get actually the unit number. And I've actually forgotten what it is, so I'm going to look it up real quick. I don't usually cut in my videos, but I'll be right back. Okay, so it was 12318 80th Avenue, Surrey, British Columbia. And so now I had the full thing. And from there, I was able to get a lot more things. Landline numbers, owner information, all the stuff that's available via Google once you have an address. Super excited about all this. At this point, the fraud detective and I were having regular meetings. And so the next time I saw him, I shared all of this with him, that I used Amex and extracted this actual address that they were trying to have a duplicate card delivered to. And he said, I hate to disappoint you, but that's probably a drop address. There's probably nobody there. It's probably a vacant house. They're just going to use the mailbox, drive up in a car, grab the card, and take off. And so he left, and I considered that, and I decided I had to find out if that was true or not. So this is February, and it was snowing in Vancouver, which is rare, but we did get snow in Vancouver, and it had accumulated. So there was almost a foot of snow on the ground, and I drove all the way out to Surrey and 80th Avenue, middle of the night, by the way, or late. And I wasn't going to confront them or anything. I wasn't going to go bang on the door. I just had to see it. I had to know. And I parked a block away and walked through the snow to the actual address, 12318. And the lights were on. And next to the exterior kind of side door on the house, I could see shoes on the top step because they didn't want to track snow and stuff into the house, and they had taken off their shoes. So, told you this got movie like. This all happened. That was it for me. Packed it up, got my car, went back home. Next meeting with the fraud detective, I told him everything that happened. He's not at all happy with me. He said, do not go places like that on your own. He was really not happy about all that. But I had, gathered some information. It was a real house with real people in it, and certainly wasn't a vacant drop house, that's for sure. And so somehow that address was directly involved. If not the people, it was 1 degree away from the actual people. And that's where my participation in this kind of goes dark. The fraud detective had me promise that I wasn't going to do anything further, and I didn't. And he said, I can't tell you what we're doing or when, but there is something planned. That's all. That's what he told me. And then I have to refer back to the police report again. Yeah, it says here in the police report on January 24th. I thought this was February, so it's late January. January 24th. The police fraud detective ran the address of that I gave them, 12318 80th, on the Prime database, which is just their version of your criminal history. That's what it's called in British Columbia. And that actually came up with a bunch of hits, and the hits were fraud related. So as you see here, the first one, Irwin has 38 entries in Prime. That means that his police record has 38 entries in it. And this kid was only born in 82, which, back in 2007 wasn't that old. So he was a go-getter, and 5 of those were fraud related, and he had an active arrest warrant. And then there's other people that were living in the house that also had records. So we see 11 Prime entries on one, 3 were fraud, 20 Prime entries on another, 5 were fraud and an active arrest warrant. Someone with 16 entries, 5 were fraud with an arrest warrant. So I don't have to probably spell this out. They knew they had the house at that point. I'm not gonna detail the how they surveilled the house or exactly what they did, but they spent about 2 weeks working that address, and I didn't know the day that it was going to happen. Had no idea what was going on, day by day. But on March 12th, so this gives you an idea of where we are in time now. I was doing the social engineering with Amex in late January, and so this is now middle of March. March 12th, 2008, the warrant to search the house on 80th was granted, and I don't know exactly when they hit it, but they did. Full SWAT, and the detective told me that they had somebody hiding in a closet with a weapon that almost got himself killed. There was no surprise, a meth operation happening in the basement, and a lot of people living there. They pulled them all out. There were so many binders of credit cards stolen, fake check printing machinery, all the things that you would associate with fraud. He said it took him 2 loads of a 1-ton truck to get it all out of their house. And it's cool, on the search warrant they said that they were looking for like my driver's license and my credit cards and things like that's what they put on the search warrant. And that gives them the ability to take anything that might have my credit, or look at anything that might have my credit card in it, which is really small. And so pretty much everything in the house was fair game for them at that point, and they just took it all. Computers, notebooks, everything. And so that was it. They got arrested, and I was still, in mild shock because I'd been fighting this for so long. Like, house broken into in September. Then they hit the house in March. So, half a year of this going on in my life. The savings account thing, the wire transfer, the inside employee, just all of that. I felt like it couldn't be over, more fraud would pop up or something like that. But apparently fraudsters don't even have good backup practices or offsite storage practices or anything like that. Whatever the Vancouver Police Department yanked out of their house on their computers and notebooks was it. Once that was in the hands of the VPD, they had basically taken back everything that had been stolen from me originally. And I had a police report, so I was able to do like the super lock on your credit report, where nobody can hit any kind of application for credit without a really lengthy process. So I had the super lock on my credit report for 5 years, I think, and never got hit once. Never even got touched. Nobody ever even tried. So whatever the VPD did during their raid on that residence killed it all. And we won in the end. And the reason I wanted to tell this story is because, fighting back is an option in life. And you're not stuck being a victim. And I was a victim for kind of the first half of this story, all the way down to when the Vancouver the Royal Bank told me that I wasn't going to be a customer anymore. I was a victim. So, and then everything turned around. And like a movie, it became a revenge story after that. And it felt really good. Not just the hearing that the fraud guys hit the house. The whole process. Turning around and fighting back against all of that. And actually having something to do with locating these people, physically going out. That whole thing. It felt good. It felt good to fight. And if there's anything that I got out of this, it's you don't have to be a victim in life, even in really crappy circumstances like that. Even if somebody breaks into your house, even if while you're in it, that stuff, it's kind of a choice on whether you're going to play the role of doing your best to minimize the damage, or actively go after them and fight. And I did both, and the fighting part was good. Thanks for listening to this. I haven't gone through it like this in a while, so that was cathartic to tell you. I hope it was entertaining. I hope it was useful. Thanks for watching. Bye.
Heil.